Coming up in this episode.
But if you understand that it's like you're already looked after, safe, valuable, loved, you have purpose, reason, and meaning for being here, isn't that going to give you a lot more clarity in how you can actually express into the world the decisions you'll make, the way you see things for what they are, the way you're able to navigate things and course correct? Those things become inherently easier. So does that make life easier? No, they're still going to have challenges. You still have to step up to the plate. You still have to work hard, but it's just the navigation part is a lot easier.
You are now listening to the Here for the Truth podcast, hosted by Joel Rafidi and Yerasimos.
Welcome to the Here for the Truth podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We have Tom Barnett returning here today after 3 long years. And we get into some really powerful conversations around truth seeking, the collective that is the truth community, reflecting on some of the archetypes that are kind of formed within that collective and just breaking free from any rigid identities and, any rigid communities that, might feel as though it's kind of hindering potential as opposed to really cultivating it, as well as getting into all the classic Tom stuff, including natural law, self-discovery, the power of the spoken word, etc. One small favor, if we can ask it, it would really mean a lot to us if wherever you're listening to this right now, be it Spotify, be it Apple, be it YouTube, whatever the podcast provider is, if you could take just one moment before this episode starts and hit that follow button, that would really do us a world of good in terms of getting this message out there, increasing our reach and being able to impact and inspire more people in the way that we really, really intend to. All that being said, thank you so much for listening and please enjoy this episode. Welcome back to Tom Barnett after 3 long years. Our last discussion was March 17, 2022. Yeah, there's actually 2 episodes with Tom, episode 18 and episode 61. And here we are again for 233. Tom is a teacher of natural law and former holistic health practitioner. He came into the public eye in 2020 when he made a video called Can You Catch a Virus? And has since been sharing his unique perspective of the world and how we can play our role in it to the best of our potential. He recently launched The Humble Kingdom to help people break through the programs and illusions that offer to keep us indebted. Welcome back, bro. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Thanks, Joel. Hey, Rasmus. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, man, for sure.
Yeah, totally. Man, I guess one way I would like to kind of breach this conversation is what's been happening in the last 3 years. Since we've spoken, like how has your own personal journey kind of evolved and unfolded, and I guess your overall philosophical view, continuing to expand in this time frame?
Yeah, for sure. Well, look, honestly, I think it's similar to everybody because I noticed, I see what you guys post on social media. I see what a lot of people are doing at the moment. For me, it was a big journey because I had dropped out of what you might call the truther world about 15 years ago because I wasn't really a fan of the disempowerment that comes along with a lot of it. I like that it leads to an open-mindedness, which I really like. But what I didn't like was that people would often get stuck in these identities and programs that I found didn't really serve people. So I dropped out of that and I was doing film and photography. I was doing a lot of things prior to 2020. And then when I made the Can You Catch a Virus video, it kind of put me back into that realm. And I really felt that there was a role to play there. But as the years progressed, I noticed that things weren't getting better for a lot of people. And a lot of the more subtle messages that I was trying to share, I felt were being lost a lot, and I was getting actually really drained. So over time, especially over the last few years, I really tried to refine what it is that I'm helping to share because I saw what was happening insofar as like what feels good, what feels like change, or what feels like, we're doing something good either for ourselves or for the world wasn't really correlating to that happening in the world. And I saw things getting actually worse in a lot of cases. So over the last few years, I've just progressively moved out of that kind of truther, what you might call movement, and more just back into sharing what it is that can help us live a better life no matter what happens externally in the world. Because I saw a lot of people just trying to still focus on the next thing that was going to prevent them from being who they want to be. And I was like, but that's backwards. So over the last few years, and especially over the last 6 months, I've really pulled away from that and focused a lot more on what it is that helps us to do that naturally in the world. And those are the lessons of natural law.
Yeah, man. I hear you. I know we talked a little bit about this stuff when you were in California, but it's interesting to see like people on the similar page. And I mean, I think we're in the same boat there. I feel similarly about the quote unquote truth or conspiracy world. It just seems like it's continuing to be focused on negativity and more doom and gloom and more victimhood, as opposed to, positivity. And I don't mean false positivity, but just empowerment and excitement for like living your values and creation and productivity and connection. And I mean, I know that's where we're at. That's the things we keep talking about these days. So I want to ask you, like, what do you think are like the biggest, like, if you want to get more detailed about like the truth or conspiracy world, because you talked about certain identities and programs, but you want to elaborate on that some more?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one of the biggest drawbacks for a lot of people is the whole identity. So if I just start there, we can then work backwards. So a lot of people are familiar, especially as they come into this kind of world, they start realizing the government's not what they were taught when they were a kid, and neither is a lot of the world. And so what a lot of people come to the conclusion of is that our identity, as in our driver license, our passport, our straw man that leads to that, is like, that's the thing that's binding us to the system. That's the thing that's like the evil. But if you were to give that away, would your life really change? And for most people, the answer is no, because they don't know who they are. So they might relinquish a government identity, but they still have all these other identities that rule them. So they're still a slave to the whole kind of like, umbrella topic of ID or identity. I identify as this, like I identify as a truther, or I identify as somebody who is, not a slave to the government. So therefore I'm quote unquote sovereign, but the default agreements that are formed from that are literally the same identities that were binding them in the first place. So once we transcend that idea of identity and identification, then we can get more into who we really are, what the world really is, what really is binding us, because it's not something external, it's this internal mechanism. So from identities, there's all these programs that run along with that. So, from when we're young, like, this isn't news to most people listening to your show, but, we're indoctrinated with a lot, whether it's from the familial mind and then the societal mind, and then, what's programmed through schooling, television, media of all kinds. And that really sets up a lot of systems within us that continue on their own loops. And until we break those, we're not really free of anything anyway. Even if we think we've given our ID or our birth certificate back, it hasn't freed us at all, because we still have these loops that run. So that's the premise of identity and program. So anywhere you want to go with that is.
Yeah. Well, what would you say are some of the signposts that someone is genuinely breaking free from identity and kind of shedding that illusion? What are those signposts for themselves on that journey to say, hey, I am becoming more free now?
Oh, absolutely. So first of all, it's just their state of being. They're more relaxed, they're more happy, they're more optimistic in general. They're also more invested, and I always use these words because they're very key, like invested, investment, currency. It's all very key. So they're much more invested in what they're doing. So they might be like, okay, well, today what I'm focusing on is what I'm creating from who I really am. So they might spend more time getting to know who they really are. And they'll ask that as a question, like they might sit in the morning and like, who am I really? Or they might talk to God or life or creator, however you want to see that. And they're like, what is my purpose for today? Like how can I best serve my role and purpose here today? How can I best be of service to others and be a light in the world? And that lights them up. So they're not then going to go on Facebook and look at what's the next way I'm apparently going to die today? Or what's the next thing that's preventing me from being healthy? How much more are they spraying? How much worse is the food? How much worse is the soil? How is this financial collapse going to be? Which pedophile or transgender is going to be the president of something today? Like, they don't focus on that. They're more invested in who they are and what they're doing. So that's a really big sign. And outwardly, what that looks like is just a more relaxed state of being, more of a willingness to engage in life and not retreat and withdraw from life. And whatever life might give them today, they're excited about it rather than like depressed or fighting or resisting something. And that also, you'll see it in their eyes. It's usually a bit more, there's more of a light in the eye. It's more of a softer gaze. It's more of a long reaching gaze rather than this like wide eyes, like, oh shit, like what's right in front of me. It's kind of like a fear response that's constantly running. To me, those signs as somebody is more on that path of breaking through identities and programs, and more importantly, creating those for themselves. Because there's a maxim of law, and it's under natural law, that says what you create, you own. So if I'm the one creating narratives and it's making you or anybody else scared, because I create that, and most of this is in the unseen world, I own that. So I own the framework for that, including the energy given from that, which is your fear or your resistance to it. So if we reverse that, because again, under natural law, it's a maxim, we're all equal before and under the law. If someone else can do that, well, I can do that too. So if I'm now creating my own programs, I'm creating my own identities that might be more beneficial to me and others right now, then I'm in control of that framework, the investment, the currency that runs through that. So you can really see that in people, and whether they're like quote unquote awake or not, generally speaking, somebody in that state is doing better in life than somebody who's on the receiving end of so many offers to keep them indebted.
Yeah, totally, man. Thanks for the explanation. One thing that like I noticed is like, and I don't want to collectivize the truth community. There's aspects within it, obviously, but like I would say the less evolved aspects of it believe that they've been like somehow endowed with this secret knowledge and secret information that nobody else kind of has. And then like you kind of read their takes and it's like more irrational, more nonsensical than like most of what's coming even from, you know, the side that doesn't consider themselves part of the truth community or anything like that. And it's like, I laugh, man, when I read that shit.
Well, there's a level of intellectual arrogance that
Yes.
I notice.
Yeah, it's a level of elitism. So what people do, they're so focused on the elites. So like I've got this secret knowledge because I came across this thing that the Illuminati or something does that you don't know about. I do, and it's a form of elitism in itself. It's like a way to separate yourself from your disempowerment. It gives you a false sense. We've got to make that clear. It's a false sense of empowerment. Because if I have something that other people don't, well, that gives me perceived value. So I know what the Rockefellers really did to the president of this in some cave, and that's what this symbol means, and you don't know it. So I now have some kind of perceived currency or power, but realistically, like as we would say, it's kind of like that's a bit of an illusion, or it's a full illusion. But that's like, I understand it too. It's why I used to mock a lot, like you probably know that. Kind of got known for being a bit of a dick in a lot of ways. So I don't do that so much now because I also understand where that comes from. Like I understand what it's like to be disempowered or disenfranchised or living in fear or something to that effect.
Yep.
So I really am careful now about like not mocking, but just trying to give a more empowered message, because it can't help people to be mocked out of their disempowerment. So they kind of need more of it.
Well, yeah, and then if we do that, and let me be the first to say that I have my moments of being a dick. It's like we're doing the same thing that we're saying they're doing, you know what I mean, in some way, and it just doesn't ultimately go anywhere. And the reality is we've been there. You know, we don't just wake up, we just don't like learn about, let's say, 9/11, and then the next day we're at the state and having the dialogues that we're having right now. You know what I mean? At some point, you know, we were focused on everyone in the world and the evildoers and the elites. And so it's a natural progression and an evolution. So it's like, I need to catch myself when I find myself being all these fucking truthers, you know, which, okay, sometimes you can do it. You're with friends, you're talking smack, you're talking shit. It's, you know, it's fine occasionally. But generally speaking, it's like, I want to be mindful on how I'm communicating about these things, because again, it's like there is that part of me that has compassion and understands like the evolution of a person's worldview.
Well, there seems to kind of be like a natural arc when you decide to be someone who's outspoken in this space. And I think like the mocking part and just pointing it out and laughing, ha ha ha, is certainly part of it. But I think as you kind of mature in it, and this is a word that has a negative connotation now, but there is a positive use of it in this case, like you genuinely become more inclusive in the sense that for your message to cut across as best as possible, you want to have awareness of what people's charges are. And you want to be mindful in utilizing and organizing your words in a way that's actually going to cut through, as opposed to just completely blindsiding a certain group of people by mocking them or, you know, whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's all because I tell you, because I can speak from my personal experience with this. One of the reasons that I would mock and do things like that, which can still be fun, like there's still a place for it, I have to say as well. Like if some people are being like really, really ridiculous, just pointing it out is like, it can be the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons that I would do it is that it was me that was hiding. So it was me that was like, okay, I've got this. I didn't want it in the first place. I just kind of like life put me there to speak about things or speak up about things. And instead of fully stepping into that like a mature man, I was being a bit of a boy child and just kind of sitting back from really meeting that position and actually honoring it, and just kind of like sitting back behind it a little and just kind of pointing fingers and laughing and doing a bit of that. So that was less about what other people were doing and more about me, and not actually stepping into that role and actually having enough humility or maturity to actually just go, actually, no, I will take this role that's been put before me, and I'll do it to the best of my ability. And in all honesty, I wasn't doing it to the best of my ability. That's why I would always use sarcasm and humor, which I still love to do because it's fun and it's funny. And I think it's value.
There's time and a place.
Exactly. But that was the majority of what I was doing. So instead of giving something just directly helpful, I would just laugh at stuff instead, because it was the easier way out, which is a weakness. And while it still has its place, like you say, time and place, yeah, I mean, obviously I'm still proud of a lot of the stuff that I did, because there was a lot of calmness and there was a lot of things that actually helped people get results. But as far as stepping into that role is what I'm talking about, I didn't fully step into that role. I only feel like I'm starting to do that now. And so yeah, it just took a lot of letting go of identities or refusal to meet an identity as well, which is all disempowerment, all the stuff that I was mocking. So yeah, good journey.
Yeah, I want to add too, because I found in my personal life is that like when I'm heavily like mocking or dismissing, you know, or that part of me is kind of like hijacked my thinking and behavior, like it's very often like I'm not really content and happy with who I am and what my purpose is, and do I really know myself on a deep level. It's like it's a way to kind of keep myself from the vulnerability of, well, maybe I'm not doing the kind of work that I want to do. Maybe I don't have the relationships I have. Maybe I'm not successful in the way that I want to be successful. So it's like you get that hit of like good feeling by putting someone else down.
Well, I think, you know, introspecting in the moments that I resort to mocking as a form of response are the times when I'm probably more actually insecure about what my genuine views are or genuine beliefs are on this topic that I'm engaging in, you know, and I see that a lot as well. It comes from an insecurity and a vulnerability of, oh, do I know enough about what I'm talking about? Am I actually right? How confident am I in that? And that's where you kind of want to try blanket someone else down instead of engaging in genuine, you know, discussion.
Well, I've definitely, Joel, I've seen a few of your podcasts, your posts on Facebook, especially more recently. Like, social media is weird. I won't see anything from anyone for ages, and I'm like, a year later, I'm like, oh, do they even exist anymore? You have to go look for them to see what they've been talking about. But some of the stuff I've seen from you, Joel, has just been really lasered. It's really focused. There's no like fluff in it, and that shows me that that is what you're talking about. That's, you have a full certainty and confidence in what you're saying, because it's just the message itself is inherently true, and you're aligning with that like on a personal level, so you're living it. And but I think that really comes through, like you can really tell. So hearing that come from you now, like I can, because I've seen it myself, like you can see that that's the progression. Instead of needing to hide behind an insecurity, it's like that's falling away and it's just coming into this clarity of a message. And you're asking more same, you know, when I messaged or I commented on that one that you put out, because I've met you and I've felt that and I've seen it. It's like, oh, that's really congruent, and that's what's different from somebody who can say the same words and maybe even a massive big following from it somehow, because it's like it sounds fanciful. It's different from somebody who's actually doing it because it carries beyond the words. There's like a resonance that carries further.
Yeah, totally, man. Totally. And thank you for that, bro. I really appreciate that acknowledgement. One thing you mentioned before, you know, like performing at the best of my ability, like I feel like that's a fallacy in and of itself, you know, because like what is that end goal that is the best of my ability? It's like if we observe like our own growth of knowledge as always fallible, then there's kind of always room to improve, you know? It's like we're always in a process of becoming. It's like it's really hard for me to say when I'm in my peak, because, you know, I know there's always room for adjustment and room for growth there.
Yeah, definitely. It's more in the moment. Like, are you meeting the moment? So am I doing the best that I can to be present with you and reach into the part of me that is like beyond how do I look? How do I sound? I know you two guys and I like you. So it's like, am I going to joke around with you? I'm like going to take it seriously. Like, am I meeting the moment? And is it authentic and is it pure? Is it the right expression at the right time? That's what I mean by reaching that part, as opposed to like, am I at the peak of what I'm going to reach in this lifetime? Like you said, there's never that's a fallacy in itself. So that's why like what I really try to help people find through the work I'm doing is that in a place that's like you're the only one who can get close enough to that connection, because that's closer to God than anything in the external world that can be validated by another person, or even your egoic sense of, okay, I did 100 push-ups every day now, so now that's the peak, because that's nothing. That's just a external representation of a construct of the mind. It's nothing like tangible and real.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree. I think a lot of that whole self-help world or the personal empowerment world is actually really almost purely focused on that. Like peak performance, peak potential, peak this, peak that. But like you just said, Joel, it doesn't really exist like that. So when you turn it around and you get the inversion of the inversion, which is that inner world, you can find that if you're meeting the moment in every possible way that you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I don't know if you're open to talking about this. If you're not, just, let me know and completely dismiss me. Obviously you're a big part of the Living Free community, founded, co-founded, whatever. Through the grapevine, I heard there's a falling out of some sorts. Are you open to going into kind of what happened there at all?
Yeah, I mean, I always say this before any podcast. I don't want to know what's going to be asked. I'll talk about anything anyone wants to talk about. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So what kind of happened?
Well, it was more just, I feel like it was a parting of a natural progression of different journeys. So for me, again, like if I go back to what I was saying before about how I wasn't stepping into my full role, one of the reasons that I was open to even starting something like that in the first place was from a place of not wanting to fully step into who I really am. So I could just kind of, again, hide a little bit behind what I was, deep down, we all know our true calling and what we do and don't need to do, right? Like if you're 25 kilos overweight or 50 kilos overweight, you can convince yourself you need to see a psychiatrist or hire a coach or do this or do another course or whatever. But at the end of the day, you don't need a surgery. You don't need a coach. You just need to put that cake down. Like, just don't put that cake in your mouth. You know what you have to do. You're just not doing it. So inherently, I always knew what I wasn't doing, but I would find ways to hide that and just step into something else. So first of all, there was a lot of value in what I did and what we did together. It helped a lot of people, and a lot of people, we're finding a lot of personal value in it, irrespective of me or anyone else involved. And so on a personal level, people were still getting a lot out of it. But for me, I was just always kind of sitting behind this reason not to be fully who I really am. Like, I was still hiding. But then naturally, as you grow beyond that, like, let's say somebody takes a 9-to-5 job and they're like, I'm doing this to feed my family. I'm doing this because it's helping people. And you're justifying it at every point. But at the end of the day, you're not really doing what, like, eventually you're going to get, like, there's going to be tension within, without, all that. And it's just not going to last, or you're going to, like, destroy yourself in the process of staying. So it was just literally a matter of a parting of ways that happened gradually over time. You see things differently. You perceive things differently. So, that was basically it. It just got to the point where I was like, I can't keep doing that for myself, even if it's like, that was my safety and security as well. So that was my income that I'd built up. That was what I'd traded my initial trust and value from what I'd sacrificed to get to that point of having an audience, having enough trust to, ask for a monetary exchange in return for a private membership. And so, I was just like, well, if I'm going to let go of what I wasn't doing, like the identity that I had, if I'm going to let go of that, I have to also let go of the safety and security that came with it. Because otherwise, like, I'm not really willing. So that was it. It was an investment in myself to just change and back myself and go in the direction that I felt was a truer representation of me.
Yeah.
I love that, man. Answering the call, bro. And the call comes many times throughout a lifetime. And like, very often it's like, the test is like, when we're dependent materially or financially on something, then still having the courage to, like, honor our inner truth despite that, and having genuine trust in God and walking alongside God in that manner, that when I full-heartedly pursue what I know deep within me is the right path with me, that I'm going to be supported. Like, that's the shit right there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's scary too for all of us. Like, if it's the calling and it's too easy, it's kind of like probably not the calling. I think it's always got to come with a little bit of, like, the whole hero's journey, right? Like, it's a little bit like, like, I believe in myself, but do I believe in myself that much? Because I gave every part of that business away. Like, literally, once I walked away, not only did I not receive anything after that, but I gave everything to everyone else.
Yeah.
Just gave it. So like that was my test to be like, all right, I do believe in myself in that way. But it comes with a bit of like, this better work out. Yeah, like you have that as well. I think if it's not there, it's probably not a big enough test.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think have been some of like the most catalyzing moments? I know sometimes we ask this question to the first time guests, but like when you talk about like the ever unfolding process of knowing myself more and more, like what have been some things that like have been really, impactful for you to, or like what have been some of the big aha moments or circumstances that have kind of like, made you go like, oh fuck, like I'm like bullshitting myself, or, I need to go this direction versus that direction.
Now, a short break from the episode.
If you're looking for a thriving community of truth seekers that, don't take life too seriously, but are also really willing to get in the deep end and have vulnerable conversations, build connections, keep it real, and really grow together, then Friends of the Truth, our membership community, is absolutely the place for you. Just a single price tier now of $17 US per month. You get access to a slate of 5 calls per month, including members-only live podcasts with guests from our podcast that we bring on, and our members get to interact live in a Zoom setting, ask some questions, etc., as well as diving deep into a bunch of other really awesome topics. And you get our whole backlog of, 100 plus hours of calls. And not to mention, my favorite part is our private Telegram community. We're just laughing, sharing memes, sharing quotes, sharing books, sharing ideas, sharing tips on health, well-beings, all the amazing stuff. So if that is something that interests you, you can head to hereforthetruth.com/FOTT, or go to hereforthetruth.com and hit the Friends of the Truth button.
Back to the episode.
Well, one of the biggest ones is committing to a woman. So that's been a big thing, like getting into union with Summer. That's been huge because that you can't hide from a lot of things there.
Mm-hmm.
Just also moving into believing I'm worthy of more. Because I think we spoke about this when I hung out with you, like growing up with a very poverty-ridden mindset of life is extremely hard and difficult. You should be grateful for every like little scrap of anything. You should never spend more than a certain amount. Like, why would you buy handmade sourdough bread when white bread is 89 cents? Like, we're blessed to live in a world with white bread for 89 cents and, medications given to you left, right, and center from a doctor to stop you from being in that could be, it's like this fear-ridden poverty mindset that when that's programmed into you from a really young age from all angles, it can take a lot to come out of that, And I think what a lot of people do is they swing on that pendulum way too far. So they just go, well, I'm worth $1 million a minute and everybody should just pay me to spend 1 hour working a week on my laptop by the pool and just shower me with praise and money. But it's not really work and it's not value. So there's that in itself comes with a lot of, that will come with a lot of feelings of grief and shame and other things that are laden with that. But point being is that for me, coming out of those kinds of mindsets and stepping into not like, an Andrew Tate kind of a version of that, but into a more refined and more, I guess just a more authentic version of like me. It's kind of like, am I okay to be me no matter what that is? And so that has come through being put into the public spotlight. That came through starting and then leaving a fairly large online platform.
Mm-hmm.
That came through going into union with a woman that I love, and that's come through like what I'm doing now, which is now looking to travel more and meet more people and find more opportunity, which like it's amazing and we've had a great time, but it's also a lot of hard work and it's a lot of willingness to be uncomfortable and to be in situations that are very unknown, but just to keep trusting. So I really feel like, to summarize it, it's that willingness to trust that if you're willing to meet life, that life will be giving you that next step, even if you can't see what it is.
Thanks, bro. Well said on that. And I love that you start off by saying like committing to a woman. Like partnership has been the biggest like growth for me. Beyond committing like to my wife, but even just throughout the years, like getting into partnership and being with someone and having an intimate relationship, and like what stuff bubbles up to the surface, what patterns come up where you're like, fuck, like I need to like pay attention to this and be curious about this, because like I want to improve as a man. I want to improve in partnership. And the three of us are in, loving relationships, and I'm grateful that we are. And it's pretty incredible the amount of growth that happens when you commit to a woman who also like holds your feet to the fire
Yeah.
to a certain way, just doesn't let you get away with bullshit.
But that's what a good woman will do, in my opinion. And like the risk to be fully seen and to be fully called out is probably the greatest risk of all. Like, and it has the biggest payoff in my experience.
Yeah, well, a lot of people will say that the way to a man's true wealth is through his woman, because she's like that oracle. She's more connected to that more etheric realm, right? So it's easier for her to see what we don't see, or ahead of time, like what we're falling into. And a good woman will definitely do that. Will really help clear out a man's blockages to inheriting his own kingdom. So I do, like, it's not that I have this belief that that's the only way.
Yeah.
But I know that I've seen a lot of people, a lot of men dedicate to what they would call the spiritual path, and then eschewing women and having children in pursuit of this purity spiraling, we will call it. It's like everything's just got to be pure and all of this stuff. But it's like, I don't see that leading a man to his inner kingdom the way it can be found through, willing to go through that fire with a woman, like the right woman, who will actually be able to help you in that way. And then, like, me and your Asimos aren't there yet, but obviously, Joel, having kids must be a whole other, having a family to look after, not just a woman to look after, is like a next level of that, which I'm definitely looking forward to, but obviously can't speak to that because I don't have that experience, but you do. So I would imagine that's another level again, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's another level again, man. But like the axiom holds true: with great responsibility comes, great power, great freedom, great reward, and like you take on that responsibility, you take on that burden, and it kind of forces you to go deeper into the underworld, to go collect more treasure, which is even beyond that you believed you could muster. Like I love the Vernon Howard quote: as many, as infinite stars as there are in the sky, and the same amount of infinite riches exist within you. And that's something I definitely hold true. And it's like, again, the more risk, the more responsibility, like the more we're genuinely being called forward to bring those forth. And it's like the right path to me as my family grows and as I continue on this journey. It's like the right decision, the right path is never going to be at the cost of my ability to have healthy relationships with them. It's never going to be at their expense, at their sacrifice, ever. And so in my personal decision-making process, like that's a clear signpost for me of when something is right, is if I can genuinely pursue it without taking away from the duties that I need to, bring to the table inside the home.
Yeah, man, well said. But what's really interesting is that any man can take a woman and father a child.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't take any honor or any sacrifice to do that. This is the funny thing about the subtleties of life, is that to do that in the way that will actually help to give what you just explained, that's a decision, that's a choice. Because I could get any woman I want if I use force or manipulation or like whatever, like everything that's like not a good thing, I could do that. I can make a child without, it doesn't take a lot to do that. It actually takes almost nothing. I could get as drunk and take as much cocaine as I want, and I can still make a child. And I don't even have to look after the child.
Mm-hmm.
I can traumatize and beat that kid and neglect it, and it'll still grow up to be an adult. So it's kind of like, I think it's a good metaphor for a lot of things. Like we can work. Yeah, we can wake up and go and do stuff in the world every day, but how are we doing that? Because that's always a choice that belongs to us. Are we going to accept the offer to just sit back and just, coast through life and just be our avatar or be our identity and then hide behind that? Or are we actually going to step into life and meet it? And that's a daily choice. So yeah, it's something that takes a lot of courage, I think.
Mm-hmm, totally.
I mean, you guys, like, do you find that as well? Because I know we all have a different experience and we come from different backgrounds. But for me, that's like, I have to make that choice every day, and not every day I succeed either. Yeah, that's another thing. So.
We're going to post that cocaine and beating children clip completely out of context as the
yes, like the unicorn blowing unicorns and stuff.
Oh yeah, the blowing unicorns. That was famous.
Wow, I forgot about that.
Yeah. That was episode 2, the second one we had together, right? Somehow we were talking about like the floods or something. I forget what the context of that was, but
I think it was.
That was funny. Like, what was I going to say? I forgot.
He asked a question.
What was the question?
Is it a daily choice? Because we all come from a different background and we have different lives. Like, do you find that there's that whole needing to meet the moment? It's sometimes you don't succeed and all that.
Yeah, I think so, man. Life is a dance, man. Like sometimes I kick ass and sometimes, maybe I take a step back, sometimes I want more challenges in my life. And then other times, I'm okay with like maybe going with the flow or taking it easy. And I think that's okay too, because very often I think people get so stuck in rigidity on one side versus the other. And I'll keep saying this over and over again. I feel like a more conscious, evolved individual understands the dance, understands how to stand between the tension of opposites, how to navigate through opposites, and understanding that like different things call they call you forward to bring different things in. Maybe sometimes you want to sit on the couch and watch a TV show for 3 hours, and that's okay, as opposed to you do it and then you spend the next 24 hours beating yourself up over it. And it's like, well, there's a disconnect there, as opposed to, hey, I just spent all this time focusing on something, building my business, and at the same time, I have an aspect of me that wants to sit next to my wife and sit on the couch and snuggle up and watch a show and be entertained and laugh and then go and have the next day and not have noise around it. It's like the seamless flow between the different parts of us that are appropriate to the situation based on our value system, without this like unconscious flip-flopping or heavy inner critic that's just bashing us every moment.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense. That's key. Is like, I don't expect perfectionism of myself, like at any given point in time, Karl Popper, 20th century philosopher, to summarize, he said, all knowledge creation comes through conjecture and critique. In other words, we all learn by trial and error. And I understand that I'm going to continue to make errors, which are also opportunities for me to continue to refine, So it's like, it's the old axiom, like, fail as much as possible, as quickly as possible. And that happens when you engage fully with life, when you meet life fully head on, when you're willing to meet the moment and be there fully. And so like, I accept the costs that come with that. And to me, they're not really costs. It's gold.
Oh, absolutely. But that's the thing. Meeting the moment is meeting a mistake, if that's what it's meant to be, and not beating yourself up about it. But the other thing too, like if you're going to sit and watch a movie, that's meeting the moment, if that's the moment. Because what a lot of people won't do, because I've been around this and I was like this, is I'll find every reason not to, because I'm not worthy of that. So I'm not busy enough. I didn't do enough. I can't sit on the couch. So it's like meeting the moment isn't about always being busy and always like striving and all that. It's actually just like, is this the right time to just hold my wife's hand and just take a moment and take a breath, or watch a movie? Or because one of my favorite quotes, which I'm basing one of my presentations at Acapulco was about this. It's the Taoist expression of doing nothing and leaving nothing undone. Because a lot of the times we're just constantly in this world of doing and not enough into the being of who we are. And if we're being who we are, it might be doing like something courageous in the moment, if that's what life requires. But being might just be being still and watching the clouds for like an hour. Yeah. And that's what life wants from that moment. And if you dishonor that and dishonor yourself, you go into debt. That's the thing. Yeah. So like, oh no, I can't do that. That's a waste of time. That's for hippies. That's for like whatever, unicorns and shit. It's like, I've got to just crush this business proposal till midnight. Like that's sometimes life calls for that, but you've got to learn to discern the difference, right? And then the key is what's driving that. Is it the identity that's driving that? Is it unwillingness to meet life? Like what do you call it? Like a bypassing? Yeah.
And so often it's this need for self, like to prove that you have worth and to prove that you're worthy, with some of the decision making that we make and the behavior that we do. And so that's a real subtle program. Like, why are you saying that thing? Why are you doing that thing? Why are you behaving that manner? And is it this subtle way of being like, I want someone to tap me on the back and go, you're good. You did a good job. You're smart. You're a good friend, whatever the case may be, as opposed to like it arising from a more organic place. And it's not about the external validation or the pat on the back.
Yeah. Well, the way I kind of view what you shared was, I value a healthy, balanced psyche. I value a healthy body. I value a healthy relationship with my wife. I value a healthy relationship with my kids. And sometimes that calls for doing nothing, for not being productive in the traditional sense. That calls for me being present, having time with them, watching a movie with them, eating a tub of ice cream with them, whatever it might be, And so I think for the individual that doesn't recognize the value in that, I would say they haven't really assessed what their true values are. And I mean, this is the case. Most people are just living their lives based on conditioned values, conditioned beliefs, imposed ideas of what is correct for them without really assessing for themselves what's actually important to me. Like, I would not enjoy my work. I would not enjoy building. I would not enjoy creating if it was fucking disarray in my house and I was, sacrificing the relationships which mattered most to me 24/7 in order to build something. It's not worth building this business. It's not worth being creative at the cost of other things that I value,
I guess you have to know what you really value first and foremost.
Of course.
And even also too, like, it depends on the individual. So let's say if someone hasn't made the commitment to a woman to grow in partnership, in union, or have children, their value system is going to be different. So like us talking about like holding our partner's hand and sitting on the couch and watching a movie, like that just may be a foreign thing to someone who like that's not part of their day to day. But whatever it is, they have something else that may bring more balance as opposed to the rigidity of like, I work 20 hours a day. That's it. And like, I'm not taking care of myself. And I have no human relationships or human contact that's healthy. You know what I mean?
So how do you guys discern or develop a value system? Like, so for somebody that might be sitting there just going, well, I don't know what my values are. Like, is it what the church tells me? Is it what the TV tells me, the government? Like, how do you guys find that it's a good way to find that for yourself?
Bro, the way that I like to approach values is like, first and foremost, what is evidentially true that you value? Where in your actual world, on your desk, in your life, can you find evidence of values? Because it's always going to happen, whether consciously or unconsciously, And so some people have these vague values like integrity, love, harmony, whatever it might be. But what is the day-to-day proof of your values, of the things that you're actually interested in? Because like I said, whether it happens consciously or unconsciously, all our actions are being derived from values somewhere, So that's where I like to point people to start when it comes to really understanding what one values.
Well, and also being honest with yourself too. Like I if I'm honest, like I value my phone, I'm on it, I use it, I connect with people, I communicate with it. But a lot of people probably wouldn't say that, even though they touch this for like 8 hours a day. They would, if you said, hey, what are your values? They probably wouldn't mention that they value their phone.
But the reasons you value your phone are also beyond just the phone. You value laughter, you value connecting with friends, you value instant communication, etc.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess like to your initial question, like I think it's a process too. You have to go on an introspective journey. You have to be curious about yourself. Like, hey, why do I like this? Why do I believe this? Oh, well, I was raised this way. Well, do I really like this? I mean, I tend to approach things, especially the last like 11 years from a human design standpoint, and knowing that I'm a generator and being like, oh shit, what lights me up? Now, again, a person has to determine like, is this organic? Does it really light them up? Or are they doing, is it a trauma response? Does it open them up? Do they get like lifted, excited? Like for me, it's like, what excites me? And then I go in that direction. Now, I may be into something for 2 years and then not be into the same thing 2 years later. So it's just following this thread of excitement that guides me towards more and more of the things that I value, and hopefully turning down the noise of the programming and the conditioning from family and society that is like, no, you shouldn't do this because we've raised you and conditioned you to be into this. And it's like, no, it's coming from within somewhere. And am I honoring that? So that's kind of been my guiding force in life, is like the excitement and the enthusiasm towards things, towards people, towards experiences, towards situation that feels more expansive as opposed to contractive. Yeah. So I feel like, something you could go towards something from a contracted state, and it's like, well, maybe that's fear that's driving the thing you're going towards.
The problem is that most people believe that their authentic desires are out of reach or are an impossibility. So they just sell themselves short. Whereas when you decide to act and you go on the journey genuinely to discover, for me personally, I've proven to myself that I can have the best of the best beyond even what I could conceive at the moment of going in the journey. Like my career, my business partnership, what I get to do every day, the relationship I have with my wife, the relationship I have with my kids is genuinely better than I ever conceived when I first kind of really embarked on this journey of self-discovery and of like full expression.
Yeah, man, well said. Or nothing to add to that. I think you just said it perfectly.
Mm. And, something I want to speak to is like you mentioned before, like, the person that can't even give themselves permission to sit on the couch or watch the movie because they got to do the other things. They got to tick the other boxes. They can't have the extra chocolate, whatever it might be. And it's like, I've been kind of contemplating lately, like kind of where does that come from? And, for so many of us, we were raised in ways where like we weren't genuinely given the opportunities to build our own knowledge and to build our own reason. And so much of that was via force and coercion, sometimes in overt ways, sometimes in more covert ways, and it's kind of like there's this parenting philosophy that I'm really into at the moment called taking children seriously, which we're going to get deeper into on a personal episode. But it's like, let the child develop their own reason. Let them eat 4 chocolates and then get an upset tummy and then refine from that point in time. Let them watch 5 hours of TV, then realize their eyes hurt or they don't feel that good, and then kind of refine from there. Whereas for most of us, we have this monkey mind, this voice that comes in, the super ego, the voice of the parents, whatever it might be, that whips us before we can fully engage and learn and understand for ourselves. So there's so much deconditioning to be done in terms of, these subtle ways which we've been forced in terms of knowledge creation in the first place as well.
Yeah, and one of the ways that it's the way that things are programmed like that is to set people up to have a schism in them. For example, giving such easy access to so much content between YouTube, streaming platforms, social media in general. You could literally spend 24 hours a day. If you could stay awake 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you could be titillated, entertained, or in some way like you live a fantasy life that entire time. There's that much out there. But at the same time, given the message that you're wasting time, this is a waste of your life.
Mm-hmm.
You are addicted to these things. You are ruled by your phone or your television. So it's like providing all of this such easy access to the ability to do that, yet also the guilt and shame that comes along with that. So to me, it's irrespective of whether you do or you don't do that. The fact is that most people are split in their being because of the choices that they make. Like most people know that eating, like 15 Twinkies a day is not good for them. So they're also going to beat themselves up about it. They're going to do it and beat themselves up about it, or feel guilt or shame or whatever. Or you do the opposite, which is purity spiraling, which is like, I'm eating this vegan, organic cacao yoni ceremonial thing. Therefore, I'm awesome because I'm not bad. Like, I don't eat that. I'm not a Twinkie eater. I'm awesome. I'm this, I'm that. So you're getting all these identities around that. I'm elite because I don't do that. So, and either side is imbalanced. Either side's going to harm. It's going to come at a detriment to the being. So like, to me, that's like where if you were somewhat of a humorous tyrant, that's kind of what you would do, right? Like just put all this fish food out there for people, plus like the carrot and the stick, and just sit back and laugh, because it's very rare that people are actually finding that part of themselves that can transcend that, and therefore eat a healthy thing or eat a not so healthy thing. Not watch TV, watch TV, but either way, it's coming from their internal compass, not from a program that's going to pull at their energy and their being. Yep. I think that's a really, really key distinction and especially, Joel, that's why I like that you said that the deprogramming can happen in kids, because kids, we as human beings are super intelligent. Like I know a lot of people do really dumb stuff and it's really funny to point out and laugh at. But at the end of the day, outside of those programs, before that happens, we're actually all really, really amazingly intelligent, capable, quite magical beings. Yeah. And so if you can take them from a young age to help them come into that rather than the programming, there's literally nothing that they can't figure out for themselves as they go through. And all of that that's out there, which I call an offer, everything's an offer, it's just that. Yeah. It can be, you can accept it, not accept it, negotiate it. You can renegotiate it in your favor. You can draw currency from it. You can create something entirely different and more powerful. There's so many things you can do if you come through that way, or as an adult, deprogram yourself to an extent that you can also do that.
Yeah. Hey, Tom, what's your definition of natural law?
Just the natural ways of life, like what governs us in the way that we can step into life. So the simplest analogy I give is if you stay up all night eating Twinkies and doing cocaine, you're going to be tired and depressed the next day. Like that's a natural law. A natural law is also if you honor your circadian rhythms, if you honor the moment and you're meeting life insofar as your hydration, breath, diet, rest, relationships, and whatever, you'll feel more full of vitality. You'll feel good inside. You do something good, you'll feel good. You do something bad, you'll end up feeling bad. But that in its essence is natural law. A lot of people think that it's to do with like speeding fines and the government and all that. It's actually got nothing to do with that. Those things are regulated by natural law. Natural law is like the umbrella, which then is where things like commerce and trust law and common law and all those different like laws. The law is also an acronym. It's a synonym because it's LAW is land, air, water. That implies a jurisdiction, but law is actually LORE, which is story. So with the story of life that's created by the creator, whatever you want to call that, God, life, creator, whatever, that's a story. And then how do we fit with that story? How do we co-write the story of life? Do we just sit back and just like play the narrative that some other like intermediary energy has created? So there's a creator, but then if you're following from governments and TVs and influencers and whatever, well, then you're programmed. So you're just following a narrative that's not yours, nor is it your blueprint or the creator's path for you. So that's where most people are stuck. That's why they're indebted. They're constantly giving currency to that which is not of them or of their creator. So as you start to rewrite those laws, LORE, and the story, and you're co-creating from that place that is inherently you, then now you're actually coming under the true laws. And it's the laws of cause and effect, essentially.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like, I summarize that as like my personal relationship with truth. It's like we all know what is true for us, what kind of works for us. And we all kind of know when we kind of skirt that line or kind of bypass what's really true. And we kind of pay the cost for that time and time again. I've personally found him in my life. And so, yeah, it's like, how can I cultivate, the most authentic relationship with truth as I possibly can?
Absolutely. I went through 20 years of chronic fatigue before I snapped out of it, and a lot of pain and a lot of things. That was my lesson. So it's kind of like, that's where you're like breaking the law. So like people think breaking the law means doing something petty and going to jail. But if you break the law, the real law, you're going to suffer. Like it's got nothing to do with men or handcuffs or courts. Like you break the law, you'll suffer. If you follow the law, you'll do well in life.
Yeah, and you have to pay the price. And sometimes we like continue to break a certain law over and over again, and then we like kind of shove it under this rug in the back of the unconscious, the shadow realm, so to speak, and we think it's never going to come for us. But my personal experience, it comes hot and heavy, and it's just a matter of letting it recalibrate you and kind of riding its wave, or living a disingenuous life, living a life half lived, living a burdenless life when you don't need to. Like there's no denying the cost that comes with that.
Yeah, and it will also come at the end. So it's one of those things that people say regret is like such a heavy thing. And you can convince yourself all you like that you're living life and doing the right thing and whatever. But it comes to a point where for those that are a bit less, for those that have, I would just say less potential for finding that deeper part of themselves in this particular lifetime, it'll probably come like at the end after a lot and then they might justify it. But for people who are more on the path, like what you were saying, it comes quick, then it will happen within moments or in the moment. You'll know that you're actually not being authentic or you're not, meeting the moment properly, or you're trying to bypass or hide from something or justify something. And it comes at a cost immediately. For other people, it could take a lifetime.
Yeah, dude.
Much quicker course correction.
Yeah. It's like my personal reason has learned without a shadow of a doubt that nothing is worth lying to myself or lying to another over, because that lie is going to stain everything else I do. I'm going to carry it with me and it's going to infect everything else I do. Like I've just learned that in my life, so it's like, that's it.
It'll catch up for sure, whether it's immediately or later. Like that's why Owen Benjamin always says, like, that's why he always tells the truth, because it's just like, you got nothing to hide from then. It's like, it's really, really easy to lie. Mostly it's easy to lie to yourself. I think that's what, when I talk about these lessons in natural law, it's not about lying to others as much as it's about lying to yourself. Because at the end of the day, everything just is an extrapolation of that. You go off course with yourself, you're just going to be off course with everything else. So to me, that's the fundamental error to correct, is just like, be okay. You got to learn at some point that you're not an accident. So then if you came here via choice and agreement, which under natural law would be the case, then you inherently have as a default agreement reason, purpose, value, you're good enough, you're meant to be here. So that's your basic starting point. Whereas we're programmed out of that to think we're not good enough, we have to earn our place here. Where like you still have to do those things to an extent. You have to step into who you are. You don't just sit back and do nothing for your whole life and you're already super valuable.
Yeah.
But just as an inherent base resonance, you're also looked after. You don't need government interference or medical interference to be healthy and vibrant in the world. Like there's nothing that can harm you except for yourself. So then just to expand on that quickly, like why do people go down those roads of like medication after medication and reliance on things? Well, inherently they have a base resonance of fear. I can't be okay. I'm not made to be healthy. So that's the basic belief system that's running their circuit. So therefore, that's how they make decisions and that's how their actions extend into the world from that base resonance. But if you understand that it's like you're already looked after, safe, valuable, loved, you have purpose, reason, and meaning for being here, look, isn't that going to give you a lot more clarity in how you can actually express into the world the decisions you'll make, the way you see things for what they are, the way you're able to navigate things and course correct, as you said, your Asmos. It's like those things become inherently easier. So does that make life easier? No, they're still going to have challenges. You still have to step up to the plate. You still have to work hard, but it's just the navigation part is a lot easier. So you're not going down these roads of regret or these roads of not actually meeting life, because those will always inherently lead to justification and bypassing. It's like, yeah, but we don't really have a choice. Like I didn't have a choice. I had to do this to keep my job or something. It's like, that's not true. Or, well, I would do something different, but I've got to feed my kids and whatever. It's like, yeah, you do have to feed your kids, but that's not an excuse not to step into who you are. Like that's actually a detriment because the kids feel that if dad's not living his life as a man, the kids know that you're putting physical food on the table, but the real food, which is the entirety of the room or bigger compared to this plate-sized thing of physical food, that's what you're feeding them. You're feeding them fear, disillusionment, not safe, not secure. That's what they're really being fed. So it's like, it's so important that we don't bypass and we don't lie to ourselves and then justify and convince others, because it begins with, like, we're lying to ourselves first. So
brings to mind the Carl Jung quote, there is no greater burden the child carries than the unlived life of the parent, you know? So despite your best intentions, they're going to be impacted by, the path that you didn't walk and the path that you didn't follow.
Absolutely. And especially if you then just make it about them, it's like, well, look, I failed. There's nothing I can do, but you can do good. You can just like, well, that's a bit of a pressure.
Yeah, totally.
They pick up on the energy too, you know what I mean? So you can do the quote unquote right things, say the right things, but they know. That's like you said, Joel, these kids, these young children, they're wise, like just because maybe they don't have their cerebral cortex as developed as maybe some adults may have.
I'm so tired. I'm so tired of that comment. Like children can't develop reason until age 7 because their prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed. It's like, what, you think it's this magical thing that turns on at age 7? Like they are building reason the whole way. Even if it's not fully developed, they're still building reason. They're still building knowledge. It's almost like this gateway to bypass engaging appropriately with our children, where they are until age 7 for this thing. But anyway, that's for another conversation.
Yeah, I want to ask you this question that has been asked many people in our history, Tom. What is the meaning of life, according to you?
Wow, we're going there.
Yeah, we're going there. I know I've been talking about it lately, and I'm just curious how Tom would answer that.
Yeah, I always say the same thing. The meaning of life is to live. That's kind of like an ambiguous thing, but it's like you can break that down. But to me, that's my summary of it. The meaning of life is to live. I honestly feel most people are not living or not alive.
Yeah.
Because if you're living a program that you did not create, you're not alive. Plain and simple. If you're connecting to the fictional side of life, because there's 2 realms, you got the public and the private. The private's living, of substance and value. The public is the fictional world of entities. So you got man and woman, which are living, but the person or the name or the driver or the citizen or the resident is not alive. It's a piece of paper. It doesn't exist. So if you're constantly identifying with that side of the equation, or if you're constantly living through programs and illusions, at what part do you really think you're alive? The analogy of that is if you look at this is a good analogy. we're on Zoom now, and if I go, oh, there's me, I can see me, I'm over here. There's Yerasimos, but that's me. It's like, no, that's a digital representation of me. There's no life in that. That's my hand there. Hello. But that hand, that has no life in it. That has no blood running through it. There is no part of that that's alive. So that's the analogy. Like this is for me, but that's not. But we constantly see illusions and we constantly see reflections and we associate with that and live through that. Therefore, that's not us. That's not us that's alive. And most people do go through their whole life living another person's story or another thought form story that's not even a physical being. So like as a default mechanism, how can you say that you're alive if that's what you're doing? So for me, the purpose of life is to live, which means everything we've been talking about so far today.
Yeah, totally, man. It brings to mind Gurdjieff. Man is a machine. All his deeds, actions, words, thoughts, feelings, convictions, and habits are the result of external influences. Out of himself, a man cannot produce a single thought, a single action. Everything he says, does, thinks, feels, all this happens. You know, and like that's the state of most people's life, man. It's like they're machines. And I think to live is to recognize, you know, the mechanism of the machine.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that answer. You know, lately when I've been contemplating this, I think it relates. I was just like, the meaning of life is to truly know yourself on the deepest levels, like know who you are, what you truly value, you, not what's been projected onto you, and what your gifts are, and give those gifts, you know. And
yeah. I like your answer a lot. I think it's the correct answer because, you know, we are nature. And what's the meaning of the plants? What's the meaning of the animal? What's the meaning of the blade of grass? All of it is to live. You know, the primary baseline of all natural organisms is its own survival. Without its survival, no other interests, no other values are possible. And I think you hit on something very important earlier. And this is the primary schism, I think, in human development, is this program of human unbelonging, right? We've been made to believe that we're separate from nature, that we don't belong on earth, you know, whether it's through religious conditioning of our life being an atonement, you know, for sin or guilt, or through Gnostic conditioning that we're condemned to some kind of, you know, middle hell and we need to escape the earth prison and escape the body prison and our souls are kind of condemned here, you know, like all of this is such ancient, deep conditioning of human unbelonging, which is the antithesis from natural law if you don't believe you're part of nature in the first place.
Yep. But yes is the answer to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny though, because that whole premise, if like I said before, if you come with it, so natural law is all about nothing, everything's an offer and nothing happens without an agreement of some kind, whether you're aware of it or not. For an analogy of that is like you agreed that you're a ward of the state, and everyone's like, no, I'm not. It's like, yeah, but you signed for an ID, a license, benefits of some kind or whatever. So yes, you did. Were you given full disclosure in that? No. So is it a valid contract? No, but there's an agreement there. So until you supersede that agreement with a more powerful or a higher one, it exists as a default agreement.
Yeah.
So in that, if you come in, whether or not it's true, but you form the belief based on your agreement that you're born into sin, or you're born into a Middle Earth soul trap, or you're like whatever, if you form the agreement, because you don't have to, that's the thing. If you form the agreement that you are in some way indebted, you will live your life that way and express that way into the world. And everything that you do, touch, and feel will be an expression of that, of debt. And this is a debt-based realm according to the offer, but it's not really. It's not really. And if you have that, then the inverse is also true, because most of what we're looking at in the truth world, and there is value to truth, by the way, I was gonna ask you that maybe in a minute. I'll ask you guys that, because you know the podcast's here for the truth, right? And we'll just talking about truth as at the beginning of the podcast, but truth in itself is something that I'm heavily invested in as well. But there's a difference between truth and being a truther. They're two different things. But we can get to that. But the point is that most of us are indebted in this world, and it's a debt-based system. Everything in the system is debt-based. So that's like the offer, but it's in inversion, because everything in the world that is not truth is inversion. So like we could go through 1,000 different ways that everything is inverted in what we're given through the lens of that mirror. It's inversions, it's mirror image.
Yep.
So
how would you describe it? For example, I was born into Jehovah's Witness ideology. I never consciously agreed to that. Maybe we can talk about past life agreements, potentially, whatever. But like, how would you describe that if I didn't like consciously agree to that? And just to kind of answer your points, like I lived my life under that agreement for probably 25 years. And I specifically, in order to break that conditioning, remember making super intentional revocations to kind of dislodge this agreement and dislodge this identity, which was kind of, I felt was watching over me kind of 24/7. And so there was an intentional breaking of that agreement. But yeah, how would you kind of describe agreements in that sense when you're kind of born into ideology or born into certain, ideas?
Sure. Well, so my understanding is that the birth process is like the end extension of something that happened well before that. So when we talk about, say, the soul having its soul experience through the physical and through a body in this lifetime, where the body dies but the soul lives on, then there is an agreement or a contract in place in order to come and have this experience. So therefore, the soul, whatever the soul needs beyond the ego construct that we step into as that we experience the world through, it needs that. In some way, it's like, I need that experience because that experience is going to, as you mentioned earlier, Joel, it's going to allow me to find that treasure. Mm-hmm. Whereas without it, I'm not going to be able to have that. And it could take 2 years, it could take 25 or 30 years before you have enough experience to work through to reconnect to that place where it's like, I've got to question this now. Mm-hmm. I need to ask deeper questions because it's not the act of the question. It's not being a Jehovah's Witness or a Catholic or a Satanist or whatever. Those are just like, that's like the end-to-end expression that you can see, touch, feel, or label. But where does that come from is the question. So the more you ask the question, it's not about that. It's what that leads you to and getting back to where that comes from. So now that's freeing. Like without that, how do you know who you are?
Yeah.
Like without black, how do you know what white is, for example? Like in this world of duality, we do need reference points until we start to get to that point that we connect to the part that can discern through just feeling and being.
Yeah.
But until that, we need the experiences. We need to touch stuff that's hot. We need to be indoctrinated in ways so that we know what not indoctrinated is to connect to that place where it comes from.
Yeah, exactly. Like I mentioned earlier, the theory of knowledge is built through conjecture and criticism. Like you ask questions, then you critique whether they're true or not, and then you move on, which is kind of exactly what you're describing. How does would an example of this kind of agreement and offer-based kind of system be like, within friendships, when you sense that, there's an inauthenticity or a toxicity, or maybe a friend is being passive or gaslighting or whatever, then you don't speak up. You're kind of consenting and agreeing to that in your silence towards that as well. And you're saying, this is what I'm worth. This is the kind of friendship that, is acceptable to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's 3 principles there. So the first one you hit on is if I'm born into a certain religious family, that's not my choice. So there's consent, which is conscious decision to agree, like you're aware of it, you're aware that this is a construct that you will agree to, that's consent. Then you have assent, and assent's an unconscious decision to agree. So consent, assent. Assent is where you're not really sure, you're not consciously aware, but it's still there. When most people are aware, most of what we are is unconscious. The conscious is a smaller part of what it is that makes up our existence. So then there's silence, and silence is a form of acquiescence, which means like you just agree by default. So it's pretty simple. Like if you have nothing to say because you don't know who you are, well, under natural law, something or someone else can speak for you. Now, that doesn't mean you can speak up, speak back, and supersede that, because you can. But in the first place, if you're not willing to speak because you have nothing to say, why would you think you can complain about being told what to do or somebody else speaking for you? Because under natural law, what's going to happen is one of two things. One, you're going to form a identity as a victim. You have victim consciousness. The world is hard. It's terrible. This happens to me. Everybody else is a tyrant. I'm a victim. That's the enemy. So how is life going to be for somebody with that level of victim consciousness? It's obviously not going to be good. Everything is going to be oppression and a denser, darker, deeper energy. However, if you're like, okay, my life kind of sucks, but I must have created it somehow. And you're like, all right, maybe I just haven't been speaking up. Why? Because I'm too scared. All right, well, today I'm going to make the choice. It's like, no matter what's worse, this life that I'm currently experiencing, or like overcoming this fear of actually saying something? Because what's going to happen? Somebody's going to call me an idiot or a conspiracy theorist or whatever. It's like, so what? What's worse, doing that or living the life that you're living? So people generally on a conscious level this is a simplistic version of it, but on a conscious level, will then step into making that conscious choice and say, no, I will say this.
Yeah.
So instead of being told that you can't go to work or you have to go here or you have to go there or whatever, it's like, actually, no, that doesn't fit for me. I don't consent to that. I don't agree to that. And I'm actually going to do this. And now you start writing a narrative. Now that can go one of 1,000 different ways. But at the end of the day, that means that nobody is speaking for you now. You're beginning to speak for yourself. But until you do that, you really can't complain, because under natural law, that's your agreement.
Yeah.
If you got nothing to say, someone else can speak for you.
Yeah. In an esoteric sense, what does the spoken word or the voice kind of represent?
Yeah, so it's a resonance. So everything, if you just want to break everything down to like matter and energy and whatever, and its vibrational form, your voice or your word, your spoken word, how it comes across carries a resonance.
Mm-hmm.
So you could speak anything. This is the difference between somebody who will parrot what they've heard before and it sounds good because it's a good quote, and somebody who's speaking from a part of their being that lives that experience. The words are exactly the same. AI could spit it out for you through the computer. But as it comes out of AI on the computer versus somebody, the resonance that they project through the spoken word, it changes matter because it has an inherent value to it. It has substance. So case in point, again, going back to the mirror analogy, you could watch something speaking from a mirror, but it carries no resonance. Nothing comes out of that. Whereas the speaking into the mirror carries a resonance. Only one of those carries an actual resonance, which means it's imbued with inherent value. So the one I like to give people is gold. So gold is in the private. Gold is made by God or nature. So gold has inherent value, not just because we trade it and we affix like a USD backing value to it, but because it's inherently valuable. It carries the resonance of the sun, for example. That's what its resonant counterpart is.
Yeah, and it has natural scarcity. It's hard to find, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, not as much. It's kind of like oil. It's not as much as we're told, but yes,
I know it's not, but like that's generally why it has value as well.
Relative, yes, but it's more than that, because gold carries an inherent frequency where if you work with it, if you do like actual alchemical work with it, if you adorn yourself with garments made from gold, if you use monoatomic gold in drinking water, or if you place 24 karat gold in water, it improves the frequency, it raises the frequency of the water or your being, because it has an innate frequency that's high, that's delivered by God or nature. Now, what we do is we trade fictional reserve currency, which is a plastic note. So if you put that plastic note in or on your body or in your drinking water, would it improve or not improve your body or the drinking water? So obviously it would destruct, it would make it worse. Dirtier, less of a structure, less vibrationally effective. So that's the analogy, is that what carries an innate resonance carries true value that can be felt, heard, experienced, and can measurably raise the frequency of something else. Mm-hmm. But like parroting something or AI doing it, or the analogy being the bank note that's put in water, will not do that. It could even devalue it. So that's the difference. So the spoken word is, if it's coming from that place that's more like God working through you, or it's representing nature, or it carries inherent value in its frequency and transmission, that's the value of it, because it creates matter. It can change matter. If it can change the structure of water because it raises the frequency, it's changing matter. So that's the value. That's why in the Bible it says, in the beginning was the word. Then to have word, what else do you need? You need breath. So God breathed life into the world, so to speak. So the breath and the word carries such value in it. And how many people use that to, like, we're given that as a gift. How many people use it wisely?
Yeah. Yeah, man. Totally. Like I see my word as like a weapon and a shield as well, you know?
It's so like word is an anagram. Words is an anagram for sword. Like the word, and there's an expression: the pen's mightier than the sword. So it gives it should give a clue as to how powerful that is. And like you said, Joel, it is a sword and it is a shield. Yeah. Like no is one of the most valuable words in existence. Like, hey, I'm going to come and do stuff to your family. No, you're not. Like that no is powerful. That no sets a boundary, not just energetically, but physically as well. Like no sets boundaries. No, I'm not going to spend 5 hours on Facebook this afternoon because I could spend it with my family. Like no is a boundary. Or somebody wanting to do something or take something from you, no is a boundary, not just energetically, but physically, that's your shield. So and then you have your sword. Like if you can use words wisely, this is when you use natural law principles in, say, commerce, for example, it can be used as a sword. You can dismantle constructs with your word. Or your pen. You can also inflict damage or harm if it's in an honorable way with your word or your pen, financially, physically, or any other means, just through that. That's why the expression, the pen's mightier than the sword, because like you said, Joel, it has that capacity.
Yeah. Like when I openly speak and share my authentic values, desires, what I do stand for, what I don't stand for, like, etc., then it's like I'm signaling to the world, like, who I am, my values. And as a result of that, I'm signaling to the wider community, like determining who's going to be drawn to me, who's going to be repelled to me, what kind of world I'm building simply in making that known and making that public and speaking that forth, you know?
Yep. And if you do it inauthentically, you end up with the wrong audience, which happened to me as well. So I got to rephrase that. Some of the audience that I attracted was just out to get. And I attracted that. That's not them. That's nobody else's fault. That's mine. You know what I mean? Like all the things that I've created in life that were, let's say, negative, I would call, or not what I would consciously want, I know I created. So then instead of blaming others and seeing enemies in other people, I wind it back around. And I go, all right, so how did I give rise to that occasion? What was my agreement? Because there was an agreement on some level. And if I know that, I can't be disempowered. I can't be a victim. I look for how I create so I can then step up and create in a better way.
Yeah, man. That's proper responsibility right there.
We posted a quote today from a podcast guest we had last week. And in the episode, she said, I think you have to be radically accountable. It's a hack that I figured out early. When you assume that everything's your fault, you can look at it and then accept it and integrate it back into yourself as something beautiful. You know? Yeah, it is interesting. It's like, it's just more empowering to look at things in that manner, for sure.
And that's a choice, right? Everybody has the ability to make that choice. Everybody can choose to be accountable and see it that way. Everybody can choose to go, okay, I'm going to see this as my responsibility, not somebody else's. But how many people do that? That's what I mean. That's why this world, when people think that this world is oppressive and the government this and enemies that and Bill Gates that and New World Order, whatever, it's like, no, nobody's taking away your ability to get up and watch the sunrise. No one. No one's taking away your ability to choose what food you have. Now, yes, you might live in an area that it's harder to get higher quality food, but no one's making you stay there either. So the circumstances we find ourselves are the circumstances we find ourselves in. Play the cards you dealt, that's fine, but you're not a victim. Just because you didn't get dealt these ones or that one, these are yours, and they're a gift, so play them or make them better ones. Find better ones, create better ones, but until you're willing to make that decision, you're going to be a victim and life will suck. There will be people who rule over you. Like this whole, the government's out to get us. Government, as you guys know, is news, but mind control, a weak mind will be controlled. It's just an offer. If you strengthen your mind, it will not be controlled. Think for yourself or other people will think for you. It's a default agreement. Under natural law, it's fair. Like, how is it not fair? Like something weak in nature inherently shrivels and dies and gets fungus on it and returns to the earth to renew. It's more valuable as it's broken down bits of carbon than it was. That's life saying that was not living its purpose, basically. So like, why let yourself do that? Because we all have the ability to make that choice. Like, take more responsibility. If you can, even if it's wrong, like even if that's hippie, airy-fairy bullshit, that we create our reality. It's like, okay, well, if you have that mindset, is that, even if it's wrong, is that not better? Are you not going to feel better and create more as a result? So forget whether it's right or wrong. Like, look at your life and look at the results you want to have. And it's very plain and simple, and it's your choice. Like, everyone has the choice.
What the fuck's the alternative? You have no power. You can't do anything in your life. You know, like, I'd rather just be like, fuck it. Let me take responsibility for everything, like, no matter what.
What do you think of the statement that everyone gets what they deserve?
Ooh.
I mean, it's generalizing, and my answer will be a generalization, but I'd say, yeah. I'd say we get what we create. I think we get what we need more than what we deserve. I kind of rephrase it because like I might need to be broke for 3 years to figure out who I really am, to figure out what value is, to figure out how I can best serve my role here, as opposed to like being not quite broke, but like I don't really have the nicest car, but I've got a car. It kind of sucks, and I'm like, oh, poor me. But I never get to the point where I find what I really need. So I think we get what we need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We always get the medicine we need.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, man. I mean, speaking to what you were talking about before, it's like this is why a big emphasis of our work is self-esteem, because like your inner worth is going to be reflected in your outer worth. And for example, you'd be going to be content with a shitty environment. You're going to be content with like crappy inputs, depending on the quality of that relationship that you have with yourself. But as you nurture that, as you build that, as you build your capacity for truth, within, then you recognize what your worth is externally. And that's the simple key to reality creation is what are you creating within? What are you cultivating within? Because that's really going to determine that the world that you create and the world that you call in external to you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that it's funny because there's so many like inversions and spells wrapped up in a lot of like, even what I talk about daily on, well, I don't post daily, but just generally what I share, it's like there's so much subtlety in it. I've got to be careful, and I've got to be careful with things, or at least give room for more discussion on it, because like I think what we have to have is acceptance. Like if we're in a bad place, I don't know if being content with it I would express it that way, because if we're content with it, it kind of shows we don't need or want or deserve more. But accepting it, I would say, is highly key, because until there's acceptance, you can't remove blame and victimhood. You just come back to yourself and where it comes from. But I think we should always really want, like, being content, I think, is a really subtle thing, because there could be, I'll just give a personal example, okay, before I just say something that doesn't make sense to anybody. As you get more close to like what your story really is, or writing that story for yourself, and you're deconditioning everything else, you might actually come to the realization, not from an egoic point of view, but from a humility point of view, that you're actually destined for more, to have more. And that might be like external wealth. But it's not chasing stuff for validation. It's not chasing stuff for egoic reasons. It's like, if that's what I'm meant to have, why would I be blocking it? And to the point, what that might mean is I am very content, because I've been homeless 3 times. I've lived without money for more than 12 months straight as an experiment. I've gone without a lot of things. Like Erasmus, I shared the story with you and Sophie. I was like, I was such a righteous man that instead of at the farmer's market paying on an FPOS card where the bank would take 30 cents for the transaction, I would walk 2 kilometers to the ATM where it was a fee-free ATM, and then walk 2 kilometers back. Now, that's a lot of energy and time to use that I could have spent being of more value and service to the world. It was entirely righteous and selfish to do that, but I thought I was changing the world, and I wasn't. So I was regressing into entropy. Whereas what I'm at now, and I don't pretend that I'm right and I know everything, I'm just saying that on my arc of my journey, I've been in that place where I was content, and it was not a belief, I was content living in a tent that I stuck on council property on the top of Magic Mountain at Nobby's Beach on the Gold Coast. According to me, I had $1 million view. According to me, I was out of the system. According to me, I was content. According to me, I was doing the right thing. Everyone else living a capitalist life and whatever is a slave and an idiot. And that was my life. And was I actually content? Yes. But when I realized I was not meeting life, when I realized that I was not using my word, my voice, my skills, my abilities for anything at all, I realized that I wasn't content. But I'm content without money. I'm content without cars. I didn't have a car for 10 years. I don't need a Lamborghini. I don't need a car in the first place. I was content walking and skating. I enjoyed it immensely. It was immensely valuable to me. But then what was I giving to the world? Nothing. Like absolutely zero. I thought maybe I'd be a good example to others for living without money and sticking a tent on the hill and living in that, because look, I'm proving you can do it. But at the end of the day, that's not valuable to people. So in order to step into who you are, that may require, or may naturally, not from your own, like, I'm going to charge $1 million for a consult with somebody. It's like, naturally that could accrue wealth, and to eschew that could be slapping God in the face, and you're not able to deliver your value to the world if that's in your blueprint or story, which is subtle. That could take an hour to explain, but does that make some sense?
Yeah, it does make some sense.
Definitely does.
The word con in Spanish means with. So you were with a tent. So you were literally content.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I hear you. It's crazy, these ideas that we get of morality. I think that's a big part of it is like so many of us, and this is a big part of what Rise Above the Herd is like, we just have these skewed ideas of morality. That morality is altruism. That morality means to like be poor, to live with less, to kind of, not acquire, not accrue, not exert yourself. To love thy neighbor at all costs, even when your neighbor fucking hates you. It's interesting.
Okay, so that's a good topic because this comes up, this is kind of at the forefront of people's awareness at the moment. How do you define morality? Or if you don't define morality because it's a personal thing, what would you usually share with people as a way to like help find what's moral, like moral compass?
Yeah, totally. Well, I think a big part of the deconditioning process that, in my personal belief, people need to begin with when it comes to redefining morality is looking to nature, like the sunflower doesn't second guess its own survival. It doesn't second guess, should I turn towards the sun today to get that light? Should I dig my roots deeper into fertile ground to get, richer soil? Yet human beings with our volitional consciousness, we're the only natural entity that has this choice to kind of act against our own interest, our own survival, which to me is anti-life. And so I define morality as that which is anti-life. And this doesn't mean to like just feed yourself and accrue at all costs and accrue beyond whatever, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't believe morality exists without you being first and foremost concerned with your own self-interest in that sense. Because like I mentioned before, without the survival of the organism, no other values are possible. So I think to be moral in a way that is probably triggering is to be first and foremost interested in yourself.
Yeah, I'd agree. Because otherwise, how can you know if you don't know who you are and like what you're meant to do? How can you properly be of service to others anyway, or know what morality is?
Yeah, how can it be moral to decide that I'm just going to wither and die? I'm never going to create. I'm never going to build, and just whatever I have now can be like seeped away to like everyone else around me, and I become just this altruistic slop, and I can call myself moral.
Well, I think an example of that too is like. Imagine to the degree to which somebody doesn't know themselves to make the fundamental error of thinking that there's more than just man or woman and I'm an ape, mangina, unicorny, furry thing, and therefore I'll go in that bathroom and you have to call me this and more. Like that's a fundamental misunderstanding or not knowing of who you are. So therefore, how do you know morality? So therefore, in that state, moral is you should cut that off and you should be funded to do that. And celebrated for doing that. That's moral. But that's what you'll say and believe if you don't know who you are in the first place because you've missed the first step. So that's why, like, I think we're all on the same page of that is like knowing who you are is a fundamental to morality because without that, like, what's your moral compass? How could you possibly know what's right, wrong, just, unjust, moral, immoral if you don't know who you are? It's like, it's fanciful navel gazing at best. Like, how could you possibly know? And how do you even, like, if you can't even feel in your right mind that you're a man, if you're a man with a penis and like, whatever else, it's like, how are you going to feel what's right and wrong? I don't understand how, like, I understand how people could think, but when you're disconnected from what and who you really are, and therefore from nature, so I just don't believe morality even enters the equation. It can't, where's the compass for that? So, and I also don't believe that I know what morality is or isn't. Like I can generalize, I could say, don't punch someone in the face for no reason. But not punching somebody in the face isn't necessarily moral because what if they're attacking you and you have to defend yourself or somebody else? Like some people need a punch in the nose and it's a loving thing to do because it snaps them out of their delirium and it's for protection. It's to protect something more innocent or beautiful. So I would never say don't punch someone in the face, but I would also say punching somebody in the face as a default mechanism is not a moral thing to do. So same as taking a life, same as, like any of the, deadly sins or 10 commandments that you would break. So I don't know, what do you guys think about that in terms of, because it's such a big thing in society at the moment is this idea of morality and whatever, because there's this comeback of Christianity and turning to Jesus and God and morals and all that sort of thing. But it's, to me, there's a big inversion in there, but at the same time, it's in people's consciousness at the moment. So what do you think about the whole compass of morality?
Well, I align with a lot of what you both are saying. And while you were talking, Tom, it just made me think about punching people in the face.
Nice.
Yeah, it made me think of, the Four Agreements by whatever, Don Miguel Ruiz, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
There's elements of that I like, but there's something that I always used to like rub me the wrong way that I don't agree with is like the don't take things personally. And I just feel like someone deserves a fucking punch in the face. Like it might be the appropriate response is to give them a fucking punch in the face. So that would
But do you
be
mean
taking things personally.
metaphorically, or are you talking physically, or do you mean like because you can do that metaphorically, right? Like somebody's saying something about you, just like, listen, dickhead, and you just give it back, or do you mean like,
Well, I mean both,
right,
because sometimes one could be in self-defense, like if someone were saying something about to attack you, the appropriate thing would be to defend yourself, and that might be a punch in the face. Or let's say someone was going to, hurt my wife. Like I'm going to take that personally if someone's going to attack my wife, and so that might end, the appropriate response might end in me doing a rear naked chokehold and choking this person out. You know what I mean? So I'm just curious like what your thoughts are in regards to that, in terms of like the appropriate response to a certain situation that may include violence, and even in relationship to like the four agreements or anything similar to that, about like, oh, don't take it personally. But it's like, what's wrong with taking something personally? Maybe in some instances it's not. So I'd love to hear you.
Sure, yeah. Well, I just, from a natural law perspective, I'll just give you this. So first of all, if people are just hurling insults at you, it's usually all about them. It's not actually about you. So I think not taking it personally in that respect is true, because
I agree.
it probably is more about them. They're having a shit day. They're externalizing everything, they're projecting onto you. And if you know who you are and you know yourself, you don't need to respond. So in natural law, for example, there's a principle of you have nothing to defend and nothing to explain. So somebody's like, oh, Yerasimos, you're a shill, and Joel, you're a Freemason. I know this because I read it on Facebook, and you're a Freemason, and I know it. It's like, okay.
Yeah, whatever.
Like you have nothing. As soon as you start going, no, I'm not. No, I grew up in here, and I did. Like, you're defending it's weak. You don't need to. If it's a weak offer, if it's below your standing, you have nothing to defend and nothing to explain. Okay, so that's a principle of natural law. It's all about standing, which is to do with frequency and resonance. So then beyond that, let's say you're in an altercation experience where somebody might be about to attack your family. There's another principle here of how well do you know yourself? Because if you don't know yourself well, you're going to misperceive what's going on, and you're going to act in a way that you see fit, but does not fit the actual. So in like law enforcement and security, it's the force continuum. So meet force with force. So if somebody's coming at you with a drunken slur and they're clearly like inebriated, don't pull a weapon on them and incapacitate them when they're already incapacitated, right? So similar thing. If you're feeling things out and you know within yourself, you're calm, you know who you are, they're not really a threat, you won't punch them in the face. You might put them in a wrist lock or a choke, because you're not really going to hurt them, but you're just sending a message if they haven't got it already. You're crossing a line, don't cross it, you will get hurt. Whereas if you don't know who you are, you lash out, you hurt them badly. You haven't given them that offer first. You haven't met where they're at to give them the offer. Like, listen, you're out of line. I would turn around and go the other way. Okay. For your own best interest, leave us alone. We don't want to engage with you. Go away. Assuming you don't have the ability to just do that without even engaging with them. There's so many different levels to that, where the degree to which you know who you are will mean that you will act in a moral manner. Whatever you do, even if it's punching in the face, it will have met the moment. But it takes a real sense of self and a resolve and a calmness and a trusting in life to be able to do that. Because most people, like, what did you see during the last few years? People just like madly screaming at the world and at the sky, no, we're not doing this. It's not that. It's like nothing's happening to you. You don't have to do this stuff. But you think you do because you don't know who you are. Therefore, your reaction, your expression to the world is like way out of alignment with what's actually being presented to you, because you can't read that because you don't know who you are. So that would just be an analogy for what you were saying. But is there a place to not take things personally, or to take things personally? Yes. If there's a personal assault that's directed at you, a quick example of that, and we can move on, is that people thought that they had to respond to the quote unquote government when there were these, the offer of taking a jab in, say, 2021. It's like, and I didn't write anything to the government. Why? Because nothing was directed personally to me. there's all this conjecture about the public or everyone was like, I'm not everyone.
Yeah.
I live my own life. So why would I fall into the trap of sending a notice or something to the government? Oh, I don't consent to getting a this or a that or a medical procedure. It's like, that's not necessary. That's not part of the equation. That question was never asked. I'm not answering a question that was never asked. However, if there was like a court document sent personally to my name, then I would respond to it and respond in kind. Not like, you do this and I'll slit your throat. Or it's like, no, I'm just going to say no. You've addressed it to my name. I will respond for my name. The answer is no. Thank you very much. See you later. Do you know what I mean? It's like people were just trying to like blanket do stuff because they didn't read what was going, because they don't know. And that's fine, by the way. That's the natural progression like we were talking about earlier. Like, how do you know that? You don't know that you've agreed to these binds to the state. You don't know that.
Yep.
So it's not conscious yet. It's unconscious, but it still plays out under natural law. It's still the same. The agreements are there.
Well, I mean, that was even in their own written law itself. You know, you and I had a discussion, but back then I self-defended myself 3 times with these fines that were issued to me personally. And the way that I defeated those was because the law itself said that the public health order had to be issued to me personally with my name on it. And I never received anything from any biomedical officer with my name on it. And that was my defense every single time, you know, and it worked. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because that's seeing it for what it is. So you're actually meeting the offer where it is. You're not going on these like, no, the queen says this and she wears this size underpants, therefore I don't have to do whatever. It's like, it's ridiculous stuff that doesn't mean anything. And you're trying to defend something that doesn't need to be defended. So that, I remember when we had that chat, it's like, that was without even probably really knowing like a lot of the law. It's just like, it's just the thing that matters. Like, where's the substance? That was the substance. And that's why you got a result as well. But I remember chatting to you about that. It wasn't just that, like, that's the knowledge that came as a result of you knowing who you are. Like, no, this isn't right. But this is, but you're calm about it too. That's the thing, you know, it's like all that matters. That's the real resonance. So even then when you go and defend yourself, what does the word carry? Yeah. Is it a disempowered, quivering thing that it doesn't matter what you say about the public health order then? You are showing your resonance creates like weak matter. Yeah. But yours didn't. Yours carried a strong, it materialized into something strong, and therefore that's the result that you got.
Yeah. Oh, totally, man. It's the end result of, you know, self-esteem in my point of view. But like without the self-esteem, there is no result. There is no discovering that. There is no deciding to rock up without a lawyer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You're right. It's just the end result. Yeah.
Powerful though.
Yeah, totally, man. Dude, we're kind of wrapping up, coming close to this 90-minute conversation here. I know you've launched the Humble Kingdom. Do you kind of want to speak into a little bit of kind of what that is and what you're kind of building here?
Yeah, sure. It's just, so basically I learned over time. So when 2020 and 2021 rolled around, I was kind of like, so many people were asking me to run workshops and speak about certain topics, and I gave what I could at the time, but I always knew that it was like, it didn't have a fundamental basis. It's kind of like the martial arts analogy of throwing people in the ring without any training, and they're asking on the fly, how do I defend a kick? How do I get out of a choke? It's like, even if you give them the answer, like one wrong move or they're in the next situation, they don't know, then what do I do now? It's like, it doesn't really help at the end of the day. So the Humble Kingdom was born just because like I experienced all of that and I realized what wasn't really helping people, like where people just aren't getting the fundamentals. So I've created a beginner's guide to natural law course, which is literally about knowing thyself. So as you get to do that, you get to figure out like what we've been speaking about, like what really matters, what really do you have to even handle in that respect, and then how do you do that effectively? Because that's all based on the premise of knowing who you are. Yeah. And then just getting the fundamentals right so that as you progress through life, you could choose if you want to, you know, if you're interested in the legality side of things, which I'm not, you're in a far better place to do that. If you want to understand health more and your body more, those are the building blocks to be able to do that, and anything really. So that's my current, you know, work, is to just help people find these basics that seem to be missing. And very similar to what you guys do, actually. It's just like we all call it something different. Yeah. So the principles of natural law are very similar to the principles of knowing who you are, which is very similar to the principles of rising above the herd, which is very similar to a lot of things that are already out there. But it's like, why are you drawn to that and how do you express that? So I'm just trying to keep it real simple for people. Yeah. And given what I've found experientially for myself and others have actually given tangible results in the world. And then from there, I'll create a lot more. But at the moment, it's just this beginner's guide, because without that, all I can see is people falling into the same traps again. That's why I wanted to get out of that truther kind of stuff.
I love it, bro.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that is it. Absolutely, dude. So good.
Also,
go.
Well, I was going to just say, like, I can't wait to hang out again in a little less than 2 months. Like, we're all going to be at Confluence, which is an amazing event that's outside of San Antonio, Texas, and Bandera, Texas, that our friend Alex Zek, Molly, Chef Molly, and others are putting together.
Totally. Let's
Mike
give it
and
a
Lindsay are also, creating that. And so, yeah, I just can't wait for that event. It's the third time I'll be there. And I know, Tom, you're a speaker there. Joel, you're going to be performing your album there. And I know Joel and I are going to be giving a workshop there as well.
Yeah, totally. If anyone's interested in that, they can head to confluenceevent.com. They can use the code HFTT10 to kind of get a little discount there as well. We'll put all that in the show note. But yeah, that'll be awesome, man. I can't believe you met your ass once before me. I mean, sorry, I met you before me.
I'm looking forward to that too. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun, man. It's a great event, good people. And again, in person, there's just something different than just being on a screen connecting. Definitely. Tom, where can people access Humble Kingdom?
Yeah, the website's thehumblekingdom.com, and my socials are tombarnett.tv on Instagram and Telegram, and just my name on Facebook. So yeah, I put a lot of clips out on social media as well that are all in relation to what we've been talking about. But the course is at thehumblekingdom.com, and as I complete that course out for people, I'll have a lot more resources there too that people can tap into natural law and on different levels. So yeah, it's exciting.
Amazing, bro. That concludes round 3. Looking forward to number 4 eventually at some point in time. Thank you so much as always, man. And everyone else, thank you for listening.
Smoke and mirrors, I'm seeing through the illusion. Waking up in a time, they think you're in a delusion. Somebody set the alarms, cause they be too busy snoozing. I'm in a DeLorean. Fast forward and never